So, Mark, you described within the Zoom experience, one of the sort of the places allocated is that of the performer. Um, can you explain to us like what that is? So, what was the performance sort of screen, and how did that work?
Well, essentially, in terms of what you got when you logged on, similar to when you would arrive at your Zoom call, you arrive to the venue, almost into the lobby, and then once everyone has arrived, everyone's admitted into the room. So you have six tiles, all of which are the same size and the same depth, and then there's a main screen which is serving you the kind of visual world. So that visual world is echoed in the performer screen, but without a performer being present. So that, as the performance evolves, starts to change. There's an interplay between the film feed, the live feed that you're seeing, and that actual performance. And without spoiling it completely, because I think we would quite like to do a version of just the Zoom version again. It's sort of the narrative experience, which really I think it's there to go back to the question of actually who is the performer here? Because as you mentioned, I think at the very start, maybe before we recorded, John, we often spend a lot of our time on Zoom looking at each other and looking at ourselves. So it really kind of played with that to the point where I think what we wanted the audience to experience is, am I the performer as much as anyone else here? Or am I not? And what is my role here? So that ultimately the question at the end of it, you go, rather than what most straightforward performances are, if you think it was brilliant, it's like, I went to a show last night. It was so brilliant. They did this, they did that, they did the other. But we never talk about what we did as audience. Whereas I think at the end of this one, most people really focused on, well, how did I look? What did I bring? So I think that was the driver behind
Yeah,
that layout and that feel.
definitely, and it's so effective. And the concept as it played out was described as a sort of a virtual séance. And I think when you were talking about how you sort of layered the fabric of the sound and the musical, the compositional elements and the visuals, the the effect was to sort of create a certain suggestibility in the audience as well, which to my mind is the, sort of the classic seance setup, which is that you play with people's innate kind of frailties, you get them to a position where they will believe something, and then that is sort of performed out, and that was so well played, and some of the visual tropes kind of suggested seance as well. You know, there was obvious references to that kind of stuff. But I think, Mark, and you always describe this more eloquent than me, but you also described it conceptually as a seance to the 2021, and the fact that we have lived these sort of slightly kind of abstracted, suggestible lives where we've been, I don't know, attached to news bulletins daily coming through, telling us how we're going to live our life in the next day or so, and how we've just become more used to a different kind of suggestible way of living and that kind of stuff. So was that part of it, the seance kind of motif, was that always there, or did that come through the R&D process and in some way?
It very much came through the R&D process, but it did arrive quite early on. And again, I think when we were thinking and debating and talking about that idea of collective imagination, then the seance is probably one of the oldest, and maybe I was going to say best understood, because I think they're probably often misunderstood, but certainly the language of what a seance is to most people is very much about collective imagination. For, I'd say, the vast majority of people, they would not believe that what may be happening is happening. But then largely for the people that are involved, does that even matter? Because they've subscribed to that thing that they're in. So that metaphor or that language was quite useful because it spoke to the idea of collective imagination and the power of the people assembled. And of course, a seance will normally have the absent sitter. I mean, the name itself comes from that terminology and those ideas. That there will be the medium or the sitter that will channel it. So there's a sense of a performer there, but their role is different, I think, than what we would have in the popular performance.
Yeah.